Hello, everybody, and welcome to the X Button podcast, half an episode. Again, with myself, Joe LaRussa, and Rick Davis. This is the X Button Season 5, Episode 24.5. We are doing a half episode once again. As stated on our previous half episode, we're trying to make the 200th episode really special and get the schedules lined up. So, didn't quite work out like we were expecting, but this will be a half episode only available on YouTube, as was 198.5. We again have a single topic to discuss this week. We're not going to talk about the news or what we've been playing. We will cover the games that come out because we want to have that for the record. But thank you all for joining us. This is the X Button Podcast, half an episode, Xscape Gaming's podcast that posts every Friday from 10 a.m. onwards, God willing, available in the YouTube channel Xscape Gaming. That's pretty much it. That's the end of that spiel. So, Rick, how are you? How you doing, buddy?
I'm getting by. How about yourself?
I'm doing okay. Just cleaned up a broken glass before we started, so we started a few minutes late here, but that's all right. You had a little trip this past week, didn't you? How was that? You were at Rocket League Championships, right?
Yeah, I went down to Raleigh, North Carolina to watch the Rocket League Championship Series, Raleigh Major. So it was a long drive from Pittsburgh, so it was about 8 hours each way, give or take.
Yeah, is that where you're at, near Pittsburgh or in Pittsburgh?
I'm about I want to say about 30 miles, like southeast of it, something like that.
Okay.
But fairly close. Yeah, so I basically have always just said I'm in Pittsburgh for all intents and purposes.
Yeah, I get that for sure. I've done that. How close is Pittsburgh to Philly?
Not close in any way, shape, or form.
That's a shame.
They're pretty much the two polar opposite sides of the state.
That was always my thought, but I figured I'd ask.
Philly is extreme far east. Like, it is basically the border of Pennsylvania and New Jersey, and a little bit of New York even. Pittsburgh is, I just saw, I believe it is exactly 60 miles, give or take, from the border to Ohio. So you've actually got probably 300 miles between them.
Wow, okay. I see. Yeah, I was asking because I will most likely be going to Philly in November for Eliza Schlesinger. She has a show in Philly, and I see her once a year, and I haven't seen her yet this year, so I will probably go and pick the Philly show because that's kind of driving distance for me up here in Rochester. So
that's a pretty good drive. I mean, Rochester's western New York, is it not? It's near like Buffalo, right?
It's about an hour and change east of Buffalo, but yeah, it's pretty close.
Probably a longer drive for you than it is for me then, actually.
Yeah, it's like 6 hours, I think, or something like that. 6 or 5 or 6 hours, something.
I want to say it's about 4.5 for me.
Yeah, so it's one of those things that we'll make the drive if we're gonna stay overnight somewhere. It's not like a day trip kind of thing. So I figure the show that in November is on November 7th, so I figured it's the kind of thing where we'll go on the Friday, we'll spend the Saturday there and come back Saturday night or come back Sunday morning or something, just check it out. So, yeah. Oh, well. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. The
downside is, though, when you head to Philadelphia, you end up in Philadelphia. So
I see. Are you not a Philly fan then?
There is nobody in Pittsburgh that likes anything about Philadelphia. And, I mean, vice versa. Philadelphians tend to hate Pittsburghers as well.
Yeah, but the only experience I have with Philly is taking the train through.
Yeah, I want to be clear. I'm not the biggest fan of Pittsburgh either. I've lived here my entire life, and I don't have a whole lot nice to say about it. But I will say it's not Philadelphia, so it's got that going for it.
It sure does. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us this week on the X Button for our half episode. Once again, to emphasize that we're going to be discussing an interesting topic. So last time we did this, Rick had chosen GameStop as the topic, and I figured I would take the burden this time and try to think of a good topic. And I think I came up with a pretty fun one, wouldn't you say, Rick? It's a pretty good topic.
Yeah, it's something I've mentioned on my other show as well, so I was pretty much already prepared for it anyway.
Perfect. Yeah. So our topic this week is going to be fictional universes that we wish would get game adaptations, or we wish had gotten better game adaptations if they had already been adapted in some way, shape, or form. So to clarify, this is not video game universes. This is not Dragon Age and Mass Effect. It's not, those universes, The Last of Us is, or the Horizon Zero Dawns. These are not adaptations into other forms. These are things that originate in books or movies or TV shows that we wish had adaptations as video games. So we're going to talk about those, and we're going to discuss what kind of game we would like to see, if there are any unique mechanics or things that are cool about the world that we would be able to adapt into a universe that or into a video game universe rather, and what kind of gameplay it would have. So I'll get started this week, and then we'll just ping pong back and forth. Sound good, Rick? All right.
Hmm.
So my first pick for this topic is the universe of Dragonlance. Do you know Dragonlance, Rick?
I do not. I think I've heard of it, but I don't know anything about it.
So Dragonlance is a campaign setting under Dungeons and Dragons, under D&D. It is the second most popular setting for Dungeons and Dragons in like the world in terms of its overall popularity and how much people know about it. However, it's always overlooked for the Forgotten Realms, which is what Baldur's Gate is, and pretty much all of
Icewind
those,
Dale, yeah.
yeah, Icewind Dale, Neverwinter, all of those games that you think when you think D&D games are Forgotten Realms. And Forgotten Realms is cool. I like the Forgotten Realms well enough. I love Baldur's Gate 3. Game of the year that year, easily. Absolutely amazing. And that's
Pretty much
all.
objectively, yes, it was Game of the Year that year.
Yeah. And that's great. That's wonderful. I'm glad that Forgotten Realms exists. I'm glad that Baldur's Gate 3 exists. But I want Dragonlance to have the same respect and treatment that Forgotten Realms gets. So Rick, Dragonlance is really awesome. Dragonlance is primarily set on the planet of Krynn, and the original trilogy of books. It's a Dungeons and Dragons campaign setting that is most prominently well known for its enormous book series, originated by Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman, and they wrote three books back in the 80s: the War of the Lance trilogy, Dragons of Autumn Twilight, Dragons of Winter Night, and Dragons of Spring Dawning are the original books. And this world of Krynn is divided into like your normal fantasy world where there's like nations and things that you have, and some big cities and whatnot. But the primary driver of this universe is that it's set after an event known as the Cataclysm, and the Cataclysm was an event that happened when the god priest, the king priest, sorry, not the god priest, the king priest of Istar, in his hubris, was smote by the gods, and basically the gods destroyed the world and disappeared for like hundreds of years, like 300 years. And the original trilogy is set when during the rise of the Dragon High Lords, who have discovered chromatic dragons. There's like two types of dragons in this world, hence Dragonlance. And the colored dragons, like red and blue dragons, are the bad dragons. And I think the chromatic dragons are the good dragons. Those are like metal colors, like gold and silver. And essentially the whole plot is around this group of friends and their inadvertent involvement in this War of the Lance. They set off years prior to figure out if they could find the gods, and without spoiling the franchise, I guess they managed to find the gods. And you know, dragons come back to this world, and it's a war between dragons and dragon riders and the Dragon Lance. And the Dragon Lance is literally a lance, Rick. Like it is a mythical lance that was forged in like super duper ancient times, that's supposed to be able to pierce the hide of dragons that are otherwise basically invulnerable.
So
And
basically, we're saying that this is, and I know you'll have no idea what this means, but this is not the Elden Ring, which is basically everything except for an actual physical ring. You continue. I just wanted to make that joke.
that's a very good joke. Yes, it is the opposite of the Elden Ring. They are literally lances, and part of the journey is finding how to craft this lance, actually crafting the lance, and then going to war against the Dragon High Lords. And there's gods involved, and magic, and this and that, and tests, and ancient people, ancient magic. It is such an amazing fantasy setting, Rick, and I am so invested. I've read there's like 100 books in this series if you count all the books written by like assistant authors and things, but there's like 20 some odd books written by Margaret Weiss and or Tracy Hickman, where they work together. Actually, I have this right here. The Dragonlance Chronicles. This is a
That being, is that just one book?
no, this is the trilogy. This is the
Okay,
original
I was gonna say that,
Chronicles.
that book being that big is enough to make sure that I would never read it. But if it's all three, that's actually not too bad.
Yeah, this is all three. So this is, as you can see, Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman. This is a re-release that just came out this year, by them, and it's a compendium basically of all of it, and it's
Oh, so,
really
so that's not the actual books then, or it is the books?
these are the books. These are
Okay, okay.
this is like a full book with like extra stuff in here. It's
Oh,
not
oh,
just
okay.
the
I,
books. There's
I
like
got you. I follow you. Okay.
yeah, yeah. There's a forward actually. So, are you familiar with the actor Joe Manganiello?
I am. Actually, he's from Pittsburgh.
Yeah. So Joe Manganiello, he is a ginormous Dragonlance fan, like the
Yeah,
biggest
he's a huge
Dragonlance.
nerd. I know that.
He is, but he is
Yeah.
specifically a Dragonlance fan, and so the forward in this new edition is written by Joe Manganiello. Like he wrote a forward for this book because he's been trying for basically ever to have a movie or a TV or some sort of adaptation of the Dragonlance stuff made. So he's still
Maybe
working
that
on
is
it.
actually where I've heard about it then, because I know he has talked about it on occasion.
Yeah,
I I mean, the name Dragonlance meant nothing to me, so I just thought he was talking about some kind of D&D story, which it is.
it
But
is.
yeah, so that must be where I've heard of it in the past then. So I
Yeah.
have heard him talk about that.
Yep. So that's where. So he is a huge fan. He wrote that forward for the book. I love it as well, and it's got this rich lore because I was saying before about books. It's got like 20 some odd books written by the authors, by Tracy and Margaret. They have written a huge chunk of books. They just really recently finished a new trilogy after it went on hiatus for like 15 or 20 years. It was on hiatus because Wizards of the Coast and all their shenanigans with Sovereign Press, who did it originally, and all that crazy stuff that happened. They were able to actually, they had a whole lawsuit. Hogue on his channel covered the lawsuit that was going on because Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman sued Hasbro to let them finish the books because they had like cut something off. It was crazy. It's the whole thing. So Dragonlance is this huge fantasy world, and I think it would make an awesome D&D turn-based kind of Baldur's Gate video game. Like it is rich for that. However, I actually think that one of the key elements of Dragonlance is the dragons and riding dragons and being dragon riders and fighting dragons in the sky. So I think that as fun as a turn-based like Western RPG style D&D game, Baldur's Gate game would be, I think that it may be stronger in either an open world action game where you have uh
Do
the
you
ability.
remember? I believe it was on PS2. It was called Draken. Uh,
I've heard of
which,
Drake
which
and I
it,
never played Drake and
it actually I liked it back in the day. Because that's kind of what happened. With that
yeah.
is you were kind of a you were like this just generic fantasy chick, but she actually would ride the dragon, and it was a major part of the game.
Yeah. So I think that that would be a huge, like, depending on when you set this game, because the timeline is huge because you have the War of the Lance, and then after this trilogy you have the next, literally the next generation, because it's a group of companions that are like best friends, and then you see the next generation of like all of their children, and they also go on a crazy adventure and like save the world and stuff, and it's like there are decades of lore of this world built up where it's in books that I've read. I've read a lot of these books. I've read 19 or 20 of them. I have not read the new trilogy yet. I was waiting for them all to come out, and they did. So I do need to read those. But and there's so much stuff. So depending on when you set it, you could set it during like that King Priest reign when there would be no dragons, but you have other sorts of crazy things going on, or you could set it during the War of the Lance, which is like the main setting that everyone knows the best. And I think that some sort of you need to incorporate the action elements of the universe. So dragon riding would be really important to have. It's hard to imagine because you don't really see a lot of like mounted flying combat in games very often, do you? Where you are on a mount in the sky fighting.
It's tough to do because a lot of
Yeah.
times that depending on what kind of gameplay you're making, they don't necessarily build them to have that kind of scale.
Yeah. Yeah, so it would need to have that kind of scale accounted for. So that would be my recommendation for this universe would be some sort of either Baldur's Gate style turn-based game because it is Dungeons and Dragons. You do have your wizards and your clerics and your sorcerers and your wild magic and all those things, your priests and the warriors. So you do have all of that in there. So having that class system could work, but you'd have to figure out a way to really make the dragon fighting work. And maybe you could do that in turn-based. Maybe you could have someone mount a dragon, kind of like flying mounts in Fire Emblem. You know, when you have like a flying class in Fire Emblem where they're just like kind of in the sky. Have you ever, do you play Fire Emblem at all, Rick?
I played like 2 hours of Three Houses, and that's all I've played.
Okay,
I'm not a big strategy RPG guy, so
some of the classes you may have seen are like automatically on a mount and they're like flying. So like that kind of thing, like that could be one way to implement it maybe. But yeah, I think that having a huge world to explore because the world of Kryn is it's the world of Kryn and the continent of Ansalon, and it's so big and vast, and you have your Sylvanesti elves, and you have your Qualinesti elves, and you have your town of Solace, and you have the Knights of Solamnia, like all over in their maps. Like it's very well thought out and structured. So it really speaks to have this kind of. It's not like Witcher, where the Witcher, the continent was always just described, and then the CD Projekt just like put a continent together and made a map. Like there was never really a full official continent for The Witcher. This has official lore sources for where everything is in very, very extreme detail. So I think a game would be awesome in Dragonlance, and I think it would do really well, especially in the realm of Baldur's Gate. Having
so long as you had the D&D name on it, it was quality. It would do well.
Yeah, I think it would. And even that I haven't seen that Dungeons and Dragons movie, but the Dungeons and Dragons movie seemed to have done pretty well and was really
it was
popular.
better than it deserved to be. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and that's a Forgotten Realms thing, of course. So if they did something like that for Dragonlance, Joe Manganiello would be very happy, I'm sure. But yeah, in terms of video games, this would be a wonderful video game adaptation because we have things that are like it. We have the foundation for this stuff already, and I think that is cool. So yeah, that would be my first pick, my primary choice, number one in my heart forever. My Steam avatar. I don't know if we're on Steam Friends or not, but my Steam avatar forever has been a Dragonlance logo.
So I suppose my turn.
Yes, absolutely. Right.
Okay.
What is your first pick?
Let's set this up a little bit.
Yeah.
First of all, if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to go back to back here. I actually have 4. I thought of 2 more while you were talking, so we can still use the reason for this is I had an order I was going to go in, and because of what you just said, I'm going to change the order now because it fits more in line with what you're saying.
All right.
So the first one I'm going to say is the world of Alagasia, which, for those who don't know, you would know it better as the Aragon series. Alagasia is the continent that they are on now. Christopher Paolini, the writer, maybe a year ago, finally did release a map of the entire world, which I forget the name of it. It's like Area or something like that. And yeah, they're in a very, very small section of it. But so the reason I moved this up is because specifically the entire point of, well, it was a quadrilogy. Now there's extra books, so we'll just call it the Alagasia series, is that it is basically it's a war brewing on this continent in the post-fall of the Dragon Riders, who were in that universe. First off, if you haven't read it, I suggest you read them. They're amazing.
I'm not. I know I've heard of the really bad movie that was released in like the early 2000s, but I've never read it.
Do not go off of that. That is terrible and not in any way, shape, or form a representation of these books. These books are fantastic. But essentially, I want to say it's about 100 years before the time of the actual books. The Dragon Riders were kind of a force of justice and law across Alagasia, right? Mm-hmm. And Galbatorix, who was one of their riders, got sent on a mission. That you learn a whole lot more about this. I'll just give the very, very cliff notes. His dragon gets killed, drives him mad because in this universe, the dragon and the rider almost have like a connected mind. So if one gets like they actually get a dragon. It's not like they just ride on a dragon. They get their dragon, right? And they're pretty much continually connected and share thoughts, just like that.
Wow.
So if obviously the dragon typically would outlive the rider, and that usually causes the dragon to go mad with grief and stuff like that. But
Oh.
nevertheless, so his young dragon gets killed. It drives him mad. Blah 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 blah. He goes back, steals a dragon. This creates, he uses black magic to make it massive. It's called Shuriken, and it's just gargantuan and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And he himself basically stages a coup using 12 other riders who he corrupts to his side, known as the Forsworn, and they pretty much bring about the fall of the riders. Then jump to 100 years later, a poor farm kid named Aragon finds this weird egg thing that ends up being a dragon egg, and it hatches for him, and blah 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 blah. So we get, that's where we get. This is a very cool universe with very cool rules for how the magic works, how the dragons work. Lots of history that is intentionally kept pretty vague and open and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Lots of there's really cool races. I mean, most of the races that he deals with are elves, humans, and dwarves. But there are werecats who are very, very cool. They're, I mean, think of it as a werewolf, except it's a cat and it can actually hide amongst people like a cat, right? They're really cool race. You find, there's obviously some other races like that, but it's very neat. It's very cool. And contrary, or kind of like what you were saying there with Dragonlance, I think you could actually make a really neat third-person open world. I mean, you'd have to scale it back, obviously, because it is an entire continent, but
Yeah.
action game. The the vast majority of the book, but not all of it, is from Aragon, or sorry, the series is from Aragon's perspective. So as he kind of gets his powers or gets more powerful, kind of gets his training, all that stuff, he begins to notice how he is almost, I mean, not almost, he really is superhuman. And pretty much it takes large numbers of enemies, even those that are much stronger than your average human, to even stand a chance against him, or other dragon riders, because he does encounter some of them who are, in opposition to him. So they obviously put up a bit of a challenge. Now, obviously, that wouldn't work super well, because if you could just mow down things, you just have Dynasty Warriors, and God knows I don't want that. But I think you could do some interesting stuff if you were to go back to the time of the Dragon Riders. Even if you go through the time of, I don't know if they ever gave it a proper name, but the time when Galbatorix betrays them, I think you could actually tell a pretty cool story there. And Paolini himself, I mean, obviously he wrote a fantasy series, is a pretty big nerd, and does like to get kind of involved in the products that are dealing with the series. He is pretty open about saying how he has a lot of regrets about not being involved in that original movie. That said, Disney is working on a show, and they've been working on it for a couple years, and he is heavily involved. He won't talk a whole lot about it, but he seems to be indicating to people you can look forward to it because it's going to be good. But anyway, so if you get him involved to make sure it's all canonical, which I'm sure he would be more than willing to do that, where the money, right, and all that stuff. I think you could tell a really cool story. You could make up just an unnamed dragon rider that just died in the war, and no one would be any of the wiser.
Yeah.
I think you could tell a really cool thing. And there was one game, but it was based on the movie, and
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
it was even worse than the movie. So we're not going to count that. So technically, by the way, to be clear, all four of mine in some way, shape, or form do have an adaptation.
Well,
But
that's the second point. Is it's either got an adaptation,
right,
or it's either doesn't have an adaptation, or it has a bad
right,
adaptation that you wish was better.
all right. So
So
then
you're
moving on to my
in
next
topic.
one. Moving on to my next one, which was going to be my first one, and the caveat here is, until a month ago, it only really had one adaptation. So that's why, on the technicality, I'm going to take this one. And you've heard me mention this before. It's the Expanse series.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to be clear, this game coming out looks like it is going to be exactly what I want it to be. But it's not out yet, so I don't count it.
You're good.
Right?
You are in the clear.
So, for those who do not know, the Expanse series is a series of technically 9, but there's actually like a 10th book, that is hard sci-fi. Do you know what hard sci-fi is?
I do know what hard sci-fi is.
Okay.
Hard sci-fi is sci-fi that's grounded in actual real-world science.
Correct. Or at least they make science that would make sense in the real aspect of it, right? So that's what this is. And this actually was my first introduction to hard sci-fi, and I actually loved it. I'm like, oh man, this is way better than all the goofy laser fights and all that stuff. But like,
Aren't you a Star Wars fan?
I love Star Wars, but I'm just saying, like, this was just much more what I want out of a sci-fi game.
Yeah.
Or a sci-fi universe, excuse me. So in this universe, the name has a purpose, but basically it starts with it's in the year I want to say it's in the 2500s, something like that.
We're almost
Humanity
there.
uh, humanity is massively overpopulated at this point, so they have had to expand outside of Earth, right? Um, However, they have still this day being the 2500s, right? Not mastered or figured out faster than light travel. So they are bound within the confines of the solar system.
Hmm.
Um, they have like basically your big players in this universe are you have Earth, you have Mars. Mars in like every version where Mars has some kind of colonization, they're the military group, right? They're always a military group in anything like
Yeah.
this. And Earth and Mars are pretty much constantly at odds. And then beyond them, you have what's called the Belters. The Belters are the spacefaring people, the people that basically have lived their entire life in space. Um, and they're named that because they're past whatever the belt is that surrounds Jupiter. I don't think it's the Kepler. I think the Kepler is out near Pluto. But anyway, so you basically have those three groups, right? And the Belters for the most part hate all planet faring people. Like it's a universe with plenty of its own form of racism and stuff like that because of that. Um, but as I mentioned, it's a hard sci-fi. Like everything's based in realism. So like the simple act of even traveling, since they're not doing faster than light, is an ordeal. Like they typically takes them if they were to go from say Mars to Earth, it's probably a couple maybe a few days travel because they do move at extremely high rates of speed using what's called an Epstein drive. I did
Hmm.
not make that up. That is the name. Solomon Epstein, not our Epstein. Um, but doing so, they are subject to the laws of physics, and basically, if they don't, they have like special seats that are basically like gel, and like it'll suck them into them, and it'll inject them with drugs to make sure that they're not stroking out and stuff like that because of the immense amount of G-force being applied to their body because they're moving.
Yeah.
I don't know. It does say somewhere. I want to say about 2,000 miles an hour or something like that.
Wow.
So their bodies come under massive amounts of pressure. Um, but it's all again, it's all based in like so that they don't just travel back and forth like you fast
Yeah.
travel in a game, right? Um, and it's named The Expanse because partway through the book, like, technically at the end of the first one, things happen that starts to create avenues to get out of the solar system, but only through certain gateways. I won't get into it because it's pretty complicated. But
Wormholes.
actually, that is correct. It is wormholes. They basically create this one wormhole that then leads to this. They call it the slow zone for a reason, and there's just millions of wormholes in there that then go. They're gates technically, but they go to different systems.
Very
that have these,
interstellar.
right? Uh, yeah, that's probably not inaccurate. And but underneath all this, underneath all the when you get to the little bit crazier sci-fi dealing with the wormholes like that, there is a lot of interstellar politics here between the Belters, between Mars, between Earth, and dealing with basically planetary war and stuff like that, avoiding it, getting into it, stuff like that. And it's very, very neat. It's very interesting with a very, very good cast. The the main cast that you're with the vast majority of the time. There is other points where you skip the other characters, but they're the crew of the Rocinante, which is a name for I forget his name, but some Spanish conquistador's horse, and so they named it based off of that. Um, and they are just an awesome crew, and they pick up a few other people as they go. My favorite is a Martian Marine named Bobby Draper. That's just an amazing character. But so that's the general setup of what it is, right? And what I want is effectively what we're getting. Now, whether it ends up being it or not, we'll see. But I want something like a Mass Effect style cover-based third-person action RPG in that universe because the way that they have set up how weapons work and all that stuff, there's so much you could do. Now, that said, I do not know if this game will have anything to do with the ship-to-ship combat, which, to be fair, there's not a ton of even in the books because they when they explain it, they say that the way it works is almost like a like basically they fight from like hundreds of miles away from each other because there's
Oh.
obviously there's no friction, so they can shoot it. And basically their computer systems do all of the work because it calculates the
Hmm.
trajectories they have to fire and stuff like that. But the pilot will have to basically be constantly activating stuff and whatnot.
Right.
So in reality, if they try to stick to the rules of it, that probably wouldn't be very fun because it would just be like flipping off and on knobs and stuff like that. But
Yeah. Now,
nevertheless, it could be a cool spectacle. And like at the very least, if you get to like where you're doing like boarding parties on different ships like that, that could be really neat. Um,
now, do you want choices like Mass Effect in this? Is it like a choice-based universe you're looking for, or are you just looking for
are we talking about
combat
my
and
game
story?
or the game that exists?
No, the
Or
game that
both?
you want in your world. Do you want choices? Because you said you were looking for a Mass Effect like thing. Mass
Yeah.
Effect's second biggest
I,
thing is probably
I,
choices.
I'm more referring to the gameplay here, to be clear.
Okay,
But so
so no romance for Rick. Anti-romance Rick.
no, there's actually lots of romance in that. So maybe there is a lot of romance in the books. Um, I don't know. Maybe I guess it would depend how it works and what exactly time period it's set in.
Yeah,
Like for example, is it Alcat Games? I think is their name.
Alcat. Yeah, Alcat. Yeah.
Yeah, they're the ones making this. I do not know if they're going to have choices or not. I almost hope that they don't, although I'm assuming they will, because it is set during the events of, I think it's after the second book and before the third. And you do in this interact with some amount of the cast of the Rosinante. I don't know which ones. They haven't said. But that's fine. I want in my head's canon this to be something that can fit canonically within it. Even if it's not canon, I don't care. I want it to be something that doesn't contradict events that are actually happening in the universe, right? So in my head,
Sure.
it could be canonical.
Yeah.
So that is where I would take issue with choices, is depending how it goes. If the choices only affect you and your party, that's fine. I have no problem with that. But I don't want it to be something that will affect the universe around it, where
Yeah.
it could then cause discrepancies amongst the established lore
Okay.
and events.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds cool. I'm excited by that Expanse game. I don't know much about the Expanse, but I know.
That is a show that is worth watching. It's
Yeah.
not a perfect. Actually, the first. So the problem is with the show, there are, as I mentioned, 9 books telling the proper story, and then a 10th that's a bunch of short stories, right? So we'll say 9 books, and for the most part, each season of the show is a book, maybe a little bit more, a little bit less here or there. It stopped after the 6th, so like. The way that technically you do get closure on most of the stories that you're working on, because the way that they're structured is like you'll have like a little mini arc amongst them, and the 6th one will end the arc that they were on, but it does introduce a character who becomes the arc's antagonist for the 7th, 8th, and 9th book, and basically like to finalize the story. You don't get those because it was originally an FX show, and then after I think it was 2 seasons, they dropped it. But Amazon picked it up and did the next ones, but then they canceled it after the 6th.
Was it FX or Sci-Fi? I thought it was Sci-Fi.
Maybe it was sci-fi. You might be right. It might be Sci-Fi. That might be who it was.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you'll notice in the first couple episodes, it's all pretty cable safe, and in the other ones, it is not anymore at all, because they start swearing a lot, which they swear a lot in the book. So it actually is more accurate to do that.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
yeah, they don't swear almost at all in the first couple seasons, and they swear
Cool.
like crazy in the later ones.
Yeah. That's cool. That sounds. I'm excited by the game coming out. I think this is perfect. A perfect choice for exactly what we're talking about here, because it doesn't exist yet. You don't know what the game's going to be, and you could say this is terrible. I want this better.
Yeah.
So very cool, Rick. I like that. I like those picks. My familiarity with the Aragon stuff is literally just I know people when I was in middle school really liked those books because that's right around
Thanks,
the time
Joe.
the movie came out.
Thanks, Joe. I mean, they are technically young adult books. They are kid safe, but the reality is, like the first book was pretty, because I reread them within the last couple years.
Yeah.
The first book actually is fairly simplistic. They get a little bit more, I don't want to say advanced because they're not Lord of the Rings or anything like that, but
Yeah.
they do get to be slightly more advanced reads later.
Yeah, I mean the
they
movie
just
came
tell
out.
an awesome story. So
Yeah, I mean the movie came out in 2006. The reason it actually stands out to me because it came out in 2006. That was the year that we moved down to Florida when I was a kid. So it stands out because like that was a big thing at the time that people were like reading the books over because they had seen the movie, I guess. So so it stands out as a thing, but I just never.
The first two,
it.
Aragon and Eldest, were New York Times bestsellers before they even made that movie. So
Yeah.
that was why they made the movie.
Yeah, I believe it. Well, very cool, Rick. Very, very good choices there. So I guess we'll move on to my next pick. So my next pick is pretty straightforward. I think most people are gonna know what this is, unlike Dragonlance. I want a video game adaptation of the Chronicles of Narnia.
Okay,
I
now I have three. That was one of the ones I thought
okay.
of.
So I don't need to explain Narnia to you, but for the audience, I absolutely adore the Chronicles of Narnia. Narnia is one of my favorite book series. I read all the books when I was a kid. I think that those books are so well written. They're so interesting. The stories, the world of Narnia is
It's
crazy.
excellent high fantasy.
It
It is
is
excellent high fantasy.
it is excellent high fantasy, and it's a crazy world because our exposure to Narnia is so sporadic. Because you literally within 7 books for the audience, you see the creation of Narnia. You see it like in a span of like 100-year time frame, and then you see the end of Narnia. Like that's like that. There's so much time in this universe that is unexplored in C.S. Lewis's books that I would love to just explore that world because unlike the ones that we were talking about with fleshed out maps, Narnia is kind of a weird place where you don't have a full understanding of what it looks like and there's like extra countries that you find out in later books that you're like, wait, there's more than just Narnia here? I thought Narnia was the whole thing. It's like, no, Narnia is just like a country. There's actually like multiple other countries, and there's like pirate raiders that conquer Narnia at one point, and then there's people that go like there are islands of magic and mystery off to the Eastern Sea that nobody has explored, and one of the books, the goal is to find the end of the world, which actually exists. There is a border to the other side of the world and of
That's
life.
Dawn Trader, right? Wasn't that what their goal
Yeah,
was? To
Dawn
find the
Treader,
end of the world?
yes.
Yep, that's what I
Yep.
thought.
Yeah, and I got chills. I love Narnia, and Narnia is a little bit of a controversial choice, I think, in some ways, because
Because of
Narnia
it being religion?
is a
Is that
right.
what you're getting
Narnia
at?
is
Yeah.
a Christian allegory book
Mhm.
to every degree that you can imagine. And as a Christian myself, a practicing Christian, I love those books because I think that there are actually a lot of good stories and messages in those books about survival and people and being good and belief and faith and things. I think it's a very quality series and it has I don't want to say it has good morals, but it has good
It
morals. It
does. No,
does.
it absolutely is teaching. Like, as you mentioned, I mean, that. Now, so to be clear, I've never read the books, but I did watch all three movies. I thought all three movies were fantastic.
Okay.
Enough to make
The
it. And
books are
now,
amazing, Rick.
my wife did read. I think she read. You said seven. I thought it was 8 books. I,
No, there's
it's just
7.
seven. Okay.
I'll verify, but I'm like 99% certain that it's
Because
7.
I thought
Yeah.
it was seven. I thought the prequel one was the eighth one. But either way, but she did like the books a lot. And you're right. Like the religious allegory is pretty tough to miss. It's pretty in your face. However,
Yeah.
I
7.
also
It is 7.
okay, it is seven. Okay, I stand corrected. Um,
I wanted to verify, that's
no,
all.
no, that's fine. That's fine. Um, that said, you don't have to be a Christian to enjoy them. You just have to like
Yeah.
fantasy. That's all. But there is no question it does teach morals, and not in a I mean, obviously certain Bible verses can be a little, especially those geared towards children, can be a
Mhm.
little really in your face about the morals. I didn't think Narnia was at all. I just thought it was like, hey,
It's not.
this
It's not
this
in
is
your
what happens
face.
if you're an asshole. This is this is what happens. So it's just, but no, I totally agree with. As I said, I picked this as one anyway, so I totally agree with
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, so the book series, there are 7. It's The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe in publishing order. Prince Caspian, The Voyage of the Dawn Treader. Those are the trilogy of movies that were
Mhm.
made as well. Then
Mhm.
there's The Silver Chair, The Horse and His Boy, The Magician's Nephew, and The Last Battle. And they were published literally over the span of 7 years, from 1950 to
Really?
1956. They were
Oh, I
published
don't know
one
why.
after the other.
I thought the one was like really far delayed from the other ones. I didn't know they were all that close together.
No, yeah, the second to last one published is the Magician's Nephew. That's the origin of Narnia.
Right,
They went
right,
they did origin and then end one after the
right,
other.
right.
Um, yeah, it's so cool, this universe, and I think in terms of what kind of game I would want, I think this would be a really interesting open world game as well. Not in the same
That's what
way.
I was thinking as well.
Yeah, not in the same way that Dragonlance could, because Dragonlance could be open world or turn-based. It really could go either way. Narnia has to be an open action adventure because there's no class system. If that's not
Right.
like you need to have that I am this person and I am leveling myself up and being strong because there is high fantasy and there is magic, but like there's not really a lot of spell casting in the series if you
The
remember
spell
like
casting is mostly by the bad guys anyway, isn't it?
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the good guys don't really do much in the way of magic.
Yeah. So you described I don't it's not really a spoiler to talk about this. So you know your wormhole, the slow area that you were talking about in the
The slow zone,
Expanse,
yeah.
the
Yeah.
slow zone. Yeah, there's a thing like that in Narnia, actually, except it's puddles of water.
Hmm.
um, and that's the general. I won't say that's the general plot, but that's a plot point of the magician's nephew. Is that like the magician's nephew, the main character of the books, goes of that book goes into like this alternate it's not really an alternate universe. It's kind of like a nothing zone. It's just like the zone and there's a bunch of puddles and each puddle like leads to another universe. It's like a
Okay. Yeah.
hub.
Yeah. No, I mean that's
Um
exactly what the slow zone is essentially.
yeah. And so there that exists in that world as well. And yeah, Narnia's series is it's so good. It's so interesting because you do have crazy awesome characters like Aslan and the White Witch, and you can see the origin of the White Witch in some of these books. Like, one of my favorite things to just think about is there's a chapter. There are two chapters in the line, The Witch in the Wardrobe, called, and the one chapter is called uh, Deep Magic from the Dawn of Time. And then there's a chapter after it that's called Deeper Magic from Before the
Hmm.
Dawn of Time.
Hmm.
Or yeah, and I love
Hmm.
that. It's like because there's a scene in the book, or sorry, in the movie, if you'll remember, where Aslan is on the table and
Hmm.
she's like citing the stuff, and he roars at her in Liam Neeson's voice, "Don't
Hmm.
cite the deep magic to me,
Right. Yep.
witch.
I
I was
I actually
there when
remember
it
that
was
exactly. Yep.
created."
I remember that. I remember that scene exactly.
And it's like chills. I love Narnia so much, and that part of the reason that this is giving me the chills is because I do have that imagery of it on screen as well as my memories of the books that I don't have with Dragonlance. Like as much
Hmm.
as I think about Dragonlance and love Dragonlance, Narnia has had some adaptations outside of video games, and there actually were video game adaptations. They adapted the movies or whatever into
Hmm.
cheap.
Just the first one, I think. I don't think Caspian or Dawn Treader. I don't think they made.
I thought Caspian
Did, did they make a
had a
game out
game.
of that?
I thought Caspian did, but I don't think the Dawn Treader one did. I
I
could
don't
be
even remember if
wrong.
Dawn Treader might not even been Disney. I'm trying to remember if it was. I don't think it was. I think Disney did the first two, and then someone else did the third, and just nobody carried it on.
Yeah,
They did use the same actor.
it
Well,
is the
I guess
same
one
story.
actor, but
It is a continuation of the story. That is
mhm.
correct.
Yeah.
That is true. Um, there is an ownership change in there. It is Disney for the first for the first one, but then it does switch over into a different one. Let me verify who that is because I want to.
So they didn't even do Caspian then? I thought they did Caspian as well.
No, sorry, it was Disney was the
Okay,
first two.
okay,
Sorry,
okay,
I
okay.
meant the first. Yeah, my apologies.
Gotcha.
I meant the first two. So the Dawn Treader one is from Walden Media. It was distributed by Fox. So
Okay. Well, that is Disney now, but at the time that was not.
yeah. Yeah, so there were a lot of rights concerns over Narnia
Hmm.
for a really long time, and now that's been all settled, and they are doing a new Narnia series. They're doing a Netflix series, actually.
Oh, really? I did
Yeah.
not know that.
Yeah, they are. They're doing a Netflix series. I am interested in it. I have some concerns over it because as much as I very much love Greta Gerwig, I do not necessarily trust Greta Gerwig to do
Yeah,
a Christian
I don't know if this is her
allegorical,
wheelhouse. Yeah,
but she is running it. She is running the show. She is the showrunner for this version here.
yeah. I don't know how I feel
Uh,
about that either. Then.
They have cast a whole bunch of people, or they're in negotiations. So Emma Mackey is going to be the White Witch. They're in negotiations with Daniel Craig and Meryl Streep and Carey Mulligan for casting. So it is moving along. There was a lot of time, took a lot of time to get it,
Mm,
but Greta Gerwig is. It was originally going to be movies actually, and then it became a Netflix thing,
mm,
show. At least I think it's a show. It actually may be Netflix movies. It is done by Netflix is what I know.
mm.
I'm looking at it here. It looks like it may be Netflix films actually. So my apologies for saying it
Okay.
was a TV show,
Oh,
but
so okay,
still,
so it is movies. Okay,
they are movies, but they are Netflix movies. That's why I
right,
knew it
right,
was
right.
Netflix, and that's where it was mixing up in my head
Gotcha,
because they don't do a lot
gotcha.
of movies. Yeah, so Narnia is amazing. I hope people read Narnia, continue to read it, and the lessons in there. And I do love Greta Gerwig. I really do. Lady Bird is one of my favorite movies. Lady Bird is an absolutely amazing film. If you've never seen Lady Bird, have you seen Lady Bird, Rick?
No.
That was her. That was with what's her face? The Irish girl who no one knows how to say her name. Saoirse Ronan.
I don't know who that is.
Okay. Well, that's that's who it is, yeah. So Lady
Gotcha.
Bird,
Damn it.
and it also starred Laurie Metcalf, who played Jackie on Roseanne. So great movie. Absolutely great movie. Highly recommended it. Recommend it for you. And yeah, I Saoirse Una Ronan is her name. Saoirse. Saoirse is how it's spelled. So yeah, Saoirse Ronan. Anyway, Narnia, great stuff, and I think that the open world style game really is the best bet for it because you need to have that actiony combat, and
Yeah, I
you
agree.
could
I agree.
set it. Would you want to set it during those movies or during the books, or would you be interested in setting it in other times and
I, I
places?
I think that is one where you'd be better off outside of the events of the individual books. You could have it in between them and maybe reference what happened in one of,
Yeah.
one of the. Yeah, I mean, particularly, I think maybe in between the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe and Caspian might be a good place to set it because you could.
I mean, that's like
You,
thousand. That's like 1,000 years.
right,
So
right,
yeah.
right. And, yeah, there's a lot that happens, but you could still have the fallout of the Pevensies,
Yeah.
with their war with the White Witch and all that stuff. So there's a lot you could do there, and you could still have them. You could still have your party or member or what character, I mean, or
Yeah.
whatever, interact with some remaining characters from Narnia. I think there's a lot you could do there.
I think there is too. I am torn because the Narnia series is really, in a lot of ways, inextricably tied to the Pevensey children and or their
Hmm.
relatives with Eustace in the Dawn Treader
Right,
series. Like
right.
they're integral to a lot of it, but they are not in all of them. They don't have to be there. They're just really important characters. So
Mm.
I think you could do something in the world set,
Well,
outside of the
they're more
timeline.
important for the progression of events of Narnia, are they not? Like,
Yeah.
whereas, like, if you were to do something not dealing with them, and it set in between them, that would still work because you could still be
Yeah.
somehow involved in whatever political events are occurring
Yeah,
at that time.
exactly. Narnia wouldn't go, nothing crazy would happen because the
Right,
Pevensies and their family wasn't involved, but it
right.
could still be a really cool story with an action combat. And the nice thing is, unlike with Dragonlance or Aragon, you don't need to worry about the dragons or anything. Like it's
Hmm.
just straight action. It's basically just a third person over the shoulder action kind of game.
Hmm.
It'd be very like kind of like Final Fantasy 16-ish if you really think about it, without without the icon fights and things like that. Like that would be the style of game that you'd be really aiming for, I would say. Um, yeah. So that's my second pick and one of Rick's other picks, I guess. There. Um,
Yeah, that
yeah.
was your second and my third.
Yeah. So Rick,
So
back to you for your
yep. My
next.
my other one is I'm gonna say there's a slight possibility that I may have stolen one of yours with this one too.
I doubt it.
No, okay. Again, something that has had quite a few adaptations, yet
Yeah,
all were
definitely not
absolute.
mine.
Okay, all were absolutely terrible. I would love to see a good, again, action RPG in the Avatar: The Last Airbender universe.
I thought about that. That was gonna be an either.
It's a little too easy of an answer. I
It
agree,
is. It was gonna be
but
my. It was gonna be an added-on fourth pick or like an honorable mention.
mhm.
And yeah, when you said that that I may have picked it, I was like, oh, he's thinking
Yeah,
Avatar. Yeah.
yeah,
So no,
yeah.
I thought about that one, but I said no. Let me go with this other one that is a little bit more niche, I
Mm,
think. So yeah, go ahead. Talk,
yeah.
preach the Avatar
Um,
goodness,
I
Rick.
mean, I have long been a enormous fan of this series.
Me
Uh,
too.
I am not sure how I feel about what they're doing with the new show, the follow up to Korra that's coming in. I don't even know if they've given a time period, but we'll see. However, I liked Korra, and I to this
Korra
day
is
believe
so good.
Korra is good.
So
But
good.
it still isn't even, it doesn't even scratch the surface of how good Avatar is.
No, you're right. You're
To this
right.
day, I truly think that Avatar itself is one of maybe the 4 or 5 best shows ever made.
I mean, it's a
In
masterpiece.
terms of animation, it's probably one of the 2 best ever made.
It's a masterpiece. It is.
It
It is
is. It
literally
is.
a masterpiece of
It
creation for
has
sure.
unbelievably good animation. It's very clever design. All the characters are likable. Uh, but yeah, this is something I have always thought in the back of my mind is I'm like, if I had a good Avatar game coming out, and like I said, I know it's a bit rote by this point, but I think action RPG is 100% the way to go here. Um,
But
what I
does that have to be
want
an open world, or do you want it to be like a
does not have to be
setting?
open world. I'm just more
Okay.
thinking like there has to be, it has to be action. It has to be real time action combat because the very nature of the way that the benders work, like you want to see the flashy moves for the the different
Oh
kung fu
yeah,
moves
for
and all that.
sure.
So it has to be real time. But where I was always hung up, and I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't have an answer on this. I still don't know what I would want. Do I want a game where you actually play as an avatar, not Aang, not Korra, not even Kyoshi or Roku or any of the ones we know about? Or do I want a game where you have to pick one of the nations and you are then bound to their bending style? I see advantages and disadvantages to both. If you're the avatar, you obviously would get a little bit too powerful, which is probably part of the problem.
Yeah.
But also, it would be a lot harder to make a game where you could pick one of the 4, but you get to pick all 4 of them because now you've got a lot of different combat moves and all that stuff. But boy, if you think about it, you could do some cool stuff with that, right? Like each
Mm-hmm.
one would be good at certain things. Each one at certain times would be damn near useless. So there's a lot of cool stuff you could do there. But so I would say this is one where you probably let's stick with the you pick a nation side, right? And by doing this, you don't necessarily have to start in said nation, right? You could be an Earthbender and begin in the air nation or whatever. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But um, I do believe that if you're going to set this up that way, obviously whatever bender style you choose has to have advantages and disadvantages, right? I mean, water would be your healer and all that stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So by that token, I do believe now you would have to be a party-based game. You couldn't just be by yourself.
I
Uh,
agree. I was gonna say you need a party
yeah,
game. Yep.
yeah. Now that said, you could do something like what BioWare always does, which is they have all the nations represented that way. No matter what you pick, you just tuck them in and out. How you
Yeah.
go there? Maybe you team up with an avatar, but you yourself are not the avatar, right? So yeah. Actually, let's do that. Let's stick with this. Could be a very BioWare-esque RPG. Okay, even combat something like Veilguard. I think Veilguard's combat system could work very well for something like this if you really built out
Yeah.
the different bending styles.
Combat in Veilguard was like my least favorite thing because it got really
No, see,
boring.
I actually like the game. I agree.
I know a lot of people
it
did.
did not progress enough. I'll
Yeah.
agree with that. But I'm talking simply mechanically. I
Yeah,
believe
the
would be.
mechanics of it, the mechanics of Veilguard system
Yeah.
were good. I just eventually you just kind of like spammed your magic button to like hold it out as like it was just really boring. I remember listening to a spoiler or not a spoiler discussion, but just the discussion on it, and someone was like, "Yeah, the mage class is horrible in Veilguard. You really should have switched to something that wasn't magic based because I was like, oh, that's lame." But sorry, go
That's what I'm
ahead.
playing. But yeah, anyway, I think the base mechanics here. I'm talking like this would be more in depth than that, right? Particularly because you don't have they would not have to design 3 completely different play styles. I
Yeah.
mean, it would be that, but they would all function relatively similarly. It's just their advantages, disadvantages would be different, right? But I think that could be very, very cool. I guess at this point you would set it somewhere between when and what the hell's her name? The Airbender one.
Yoshi?
Yang Chang. Or
Oh,
yeah, whatever her name is.
you're talking the monk one, yeah.
The Airbender. Yeah, I forget her name. but somewhere in the thousands of years between them, you could set it, right?
Yeah.
Like, actually, I'll be honest with you. You don't have to do that. Did you ever happen to read the books? Okay.
I've never gotten into
Well, there's a lot of comics
edited
that actually
media.
are like that are continual story, but
Yeah.
there also are
I know there's novels. Like there's everything.
there are, I believe, either 4 or 5 novels. The first 2 that they wrote are actually about Kiyoshi, and that could be even if you're not with Kiyoshi in particular, that could be a pretty interesting era to do it, because during that point, the Fire Nation, for example, was a bunch of it basically was feudal Japan, right? You didn't have a unified nation; you had a bunch of separate,
Yeah.
like warrior tribes, if you will. That could be an interesting setting. You also had a lot of piracy in like the Water Tribe. You had, I guess, the Airbenders were always kind of the same, and the Earth Kingdom at that time was very much what you think of as like, the old Chinese dynasties. So like, you could do some pretty cool stories in there, like particularly with the different nations. They weren't particularly at war, but they obviously didn't like each other. So there is a lot you can do there. And if you really put somebody on it, it would take a lot. I understand that, because you would have to have 4 completely different combat styles.
Yeah.
But I think, again, we're talking pie in the sky here, right? We're reaching for the stars. I think you could do something absolutely amazing, especially if like the way that you would play, say, a firebender, right? You would have to be super aggressive, right? And anything else is pointless, because the firebender's whole point is attack and nothing else, right?
Yeah.
Whereas the waterbender, you'd be more sitting back and healing and kind of.
I mean, they do lots. I mean, they're whips, they're ice,
Yeah,
ice
well,
and whips
yes,
and everything.
yes, but I'm not saying you wouldn't have any means of combat. I'm just saying jumping into the front line is probably not your best bet, right? Whereas the airbender is all going to be parries and deflections and all that kind of stuff. So
how do you incorporate the advanced bending, the lava bending and the blood bending? How do you incorporate that sort of thing? Or do you not do that at all? Or there's like ultimate techniques?
There was not very much of it in that time, so you technically wouldn't have to do it. Even if maybe that's what your character is, right? Maybe you pick the earthbender, and I mean, obviously metal bending was technically introduced by Toph, so you couldn't do that.
So lava bending is what it would be.
Right. You could do something like that, like you yourself, whichever character you make, whatever, they're the one that discovers whatever one of not the, but one of the more advanced versions of bending.
Yeah, because Bolin is like the lava bender. So anyone, so lava bending has been a thing.
Like for example, Kiyoshi, I believe they say she comes across somebody who is a lightning bender, and it's like nobody had ever seen something like this before. So, something like that. Like you could be like, oh wow, you're playing as a character that.
Yeah. What's kind of sad? Airbenders don't have anything special. They don't have like a fancy bending thing, because you have blood bending for water benders and lightning bending for fire and lava and metal for earth.
Yeah, but the thing is, just by nature of what they are, though, they don't really have any true weakness, because you think about it, like their entire bending style is built around parrying, counterattacking, sides, all that stuff. So like, no matter what they're fighting, they're not really at a disadvantage. Whereas all the other ones have like I guess technically they would have a difficult time with earthbenders, but like,
which is why the other ones has a difficult time learning earthbending.
Right. The other ones all have like an opposite that does, and then no moon, no water bending, no sun, no fire bending. Airbenders don't have that. You always have air. That's the other thing too. No matter where you are and what you always have air to work with, and if you don't, bending is not your problem.
Yeah, you got some bigger problems to worry about.
But yeah, I really think you can do something awesome with that. And it is a shame that to this day it still has not ever gotten a proper game adaptation. Even if you wanted to recap the story of the show, which is not the way to do it, but if you did that universe and that story and those characters are so good, they deserve better than what they have gotten.
Yeah, I agree. And like, I mean, you almost put it in the same category as like Game of Thrones, where it's like a really good universe that probably could have a really cool game, but just doesn't have anything for some reason.
The best looking thing is that stupid mobile game coming out, and
it's out. Yeah, it's out already.
Oh, that came out already. Okay.
Yeah, that's out.
I don't know if it's any good or not, but it actually looked decent. It's like how did it take a mobile game to get this?
Yeah, I thought the Westeros trailer from the Summer Game Fest looked interesting. That was like a strategy RPG version.
Yeah, well, no, it's a real-time strategy, I believe.
That's what I meant. Real-time strategy. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean RPG.
Yeah, that may be good. That's not my type of thing, so I didn't really pay much attention to it though. So,
But no,
It does fit that universe. I won't say it's like some out of
yeah,
left field genre for it. Like that
yeah.
does make sense in Westeros, but
Yeah. I'm right there with you though, Rick. Avatar, I love Avatar so much. Seven Havens is the new series that's coming out in the near
yes,
future.
yes,
There's no date on it yet. They're also
yes.
working on that movie that's gonna like connect everything because they like Avatar Studios exists now. It took 20 years, but Avatar Studios is a real thing and it's
Well,
like designated to make Avatar products finally.
and I assume they're also working on the second season of the Netflix live action show, which actually wasn't half bad. It wasn't great,
Yeah,
but it
they
wasn't bad.
so they are working on that. That doesn't have the creators anymore. They stepped away a long time ago from that. So that's
Mm.
Netflix just doing its own thing. I I watched that with Jing. I introduced her to Avatar. She'd never seen Avatar before, and she fell in love with it. She loved it so much. She burnt through it. She watched all of Korra. It's like a comfort show sometimes that she'll put on or we'll just put on in the background. We both love Avatar.
It's amazing.
She was interested in the Netflix show more than I was because I knew that they had gotten that DiMartino and Konietzko had stepped away from it. So I was wary of it. It's a fine show. Once you have accepted that it's not telling the story of Avatar, it's telling like a twist on Avatar. It's not a bad
No, it's
show.
telling it just semi abridged. I mean, it kind of
I
takes
mean,
out.
it changes in pretty important things in there too. Like,
Yeah, well, I mean, in ways to shorten it. So it's not as good as the show, the original
yeah.
show, obviously. But if you are one of those weirdos that just simply cannot watch an animated thing, it's still a perfectly fine adaptation.
Oh
As
yeah,
of
I agree
now,
with that.
as of now, we'll see what the second season looks like. But
If
as
you
of this
can't
point, it
watch
is.
if you can't watch an animated thing, this is good. Like this is an enjoyable thing. But if you can watch an animated thing, I would say
Yeah,
you don't
you need to
necessarily
watch the actual
need.
original one for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say the Netflix thing is not a necessary watch if you don't want to, if you like the animated version of it. But yeah, I think you had a spot on choice here, Rick. This is an excellent pick
It's
for it.
again
I think
an
a
easy
party-based
pick.
game is a really good idea.
It's a very basic and easy pick, but it is a
That's
pick
okay.
that it's a pick that truthfully should have been made by this point, and the fact that it hasn't been is infuriating.
Yeah, for sure.
I can at least
So
understand Expanse and Aragon why they haven't done them. In my brain, I cannot for life me figure out why no one's made a good Avatar game. I just simply cannot understand it.
I don't know either. I wish I did. But I feel the same about Dragonlance.
Well, but
So
Dragonlance doesn't have mass all age appeal like Avatar either.
it doesn't.
That's
You're right. It absolutely does not.
that's what I'm saying is it's like Avatar is free money. If you make
Yeah,
a good Avatar game,
it is.
it is free money, and I
If you
don't
make a bad
understand why
game,
they
it's
haven't done it.
if you make a bad game, there's a lot
It's
of
pretty
free
much,
money
yeah.
there too.
Yeah.
So, all right. Excuse me. Last pick. This is I don't want to call it a too obscure. It's a little bit niche. You may be familiar with it. You may not be. It's never had any sort of adaptation outside of its origins. It is originally a TV movie series, and it has moved on into, I think it might have some comics or whatever and stuff like that, but it has moved on into two as of now because about 6 weeks ago, the second TV series in this franchise premiered. It's had two TV series that have one lasted for 5 years, I think it was, and then 4 or 5 seasons, and then this one just premiered, new one after like 5 years since the last one ended. It is called The Librarian.
Oh, I've seen that show's on. I didn't know that was a book or whatever you
It's,
just said it was.
it
I
was
thought it was something
origin
brand new.
So The Librarian is from Dean Devlin. Dean Devlin being probably originally most famous for being a producer on Independence Day, the original Independence Day.
It's a good movie.
And yeah, and then he worked with on the sequel, the Independence Day sequel that came out like 10 years ago now. But anyway, so I think he also did Geostorm, a film called Geostorm a few years ago. But anyway, so Dean Devlin's Electric Entertainment, most famous now, I would say, for his Librarian franchise, started in the mid aughts as a TNT TV movie series, which is a crazy thing to say, but it originated as a TV movie series for in 2004, The Librarian: Quest for the Spear, and the star of this TV movie series was Noah Wyle. And what do you know Noah Wyle from, Rick? I'm sure you know
You
him
saying
from.
his name right now?
Really? You don't know Noah Wyle
Not
as.
based off you saying his name, at least. No.
Okay. He is most famous for the role of John Carter in ER in the 90s and
What
2000s.
the hell would make you think I would know who John Carter from ER is?
Let me finish.
Oh, okay,
And
okay.
and you would probably know him from Falling Skies, the TV series
I've
on
never watched
Sci-Fi.
that. My dad watched that. I actually never did. So.
Okay, so I thought you might know him as from Falling Skies because he was the star of that show. He was like the top bill of that show for the
Mm.
5 seasons of it. So if you knew him, you might know him from that. But yeah, so Noah Wyle stars alongside in this show, and you're gonna know some of these names. Kyle MacLachlan
Don't know who that is by
of
name.
Twin Peaks.
I never watched Twin Peaks, so.
Okay. And then the other one that you are definitely, absolutely gonna know is Bob Newhart.
Yeah, I mean, I think God, everybody knows who he is.
Yes, Bob Newhart starred in these movies, these random fantasy TV movies. He was a star in this show, along with Jane Curtin as Charlene and Olympia Dukakis, and Kyle MacLachlan, Kelly Hu, Dayan Fisher, and Sonia Walger in the first movie. And the only ones that carry over from movie to movie are Noah Wyle, Bob Newhart, and Jane Curtin. So this is a universe in which there is a magical interdimensional library that at one point in time was a physical presence on Earth in the form of the Great Library of Alexandria. And when the Library of Alexandria burnt down, the library basically like left the dimension and like hid away, and then at some point in time reappeared under the New York Metropolitan Library.
That's a cool idea. I'll say that's actually a pretty interesting premise.
Yeah. And so the focus of this series is the librarian's role is to keep magic contained. So let me start off by saying this is an Arthurian legend series. The Arthurian legends are all real in this. So you have your Arthurs and your Galahads and your Excaliburs and all of that. So if you think of Arthurian legend as like the baseline for the mythology, and then it expands from there to basically be that everything is kind of real, but Arthurian is the basis. And the librarian's role is to keep magic in check by going around and collecting magical artifacts that either are acting up or that there's a bad organization. It's always a different bad organization. Like each movie changes. It's the Serpent Brotherhood in one, and you know how it goes for TV movies.
You always got to have an antagonist some way.
Yeah, and it's always some big magical organization that knows just as much as the good guys do somehow, but you didn't hear about them in the first movie.
Right.
And so the trilogy of movies that existed was 2004, The Quest for the Spear, meaning the Spear of Destiny, the spear that poked, that pierced the side of Jesus on the cross. And then the next one was Return to King Solomon's Mines, where you're going after a book and that like raises the dead, basically, in like a special book. And then the final, and that was 2006. And then 2 years later, again, was The Curse of the Judas Chalice, and that's related to Dracula and vampires. And the Judas Chalice is
that took a left turn compared to the other shit.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, there's always some sort of religious allegory in here as well, but not really allegory. It's just like it takes religious artifacts.
Reference is probably
right. Religious reference with artifacts from religious history, and then but the first batch here is very much Christian religion. But as you start moving into the TV series, you actually start having ancient Egyptian and all these other different religions that come through.
So now it turns into Assassin's Creed, where all religions are one thing.
a little bit, but yeah. So that's the basis of this universe. And so after those trilogy of movies, a few years later, in 2014, they released the TV series, The Librarians, and the star of this TV series, along with Noah Wyle having like a guest role periodically. He was never like the main guy, but he showed up in like 3 or 4 episodes a season or something like that. Was Rebecca Romijn.
That's interesting.
And you know who
So,
Rebecca Romaine is, right?
yes, I do know who she is.
Yes, Rebecca Romaine, the Mystique, the original Mystique from the X-Men series, and a bunch of
I
other
suppose
things, of
that's one way
course.
you could know her, but most of others of my age would know her from posters hanging on our wall in the late '80s, early '90s, or being
Mm-hmm.
married to John Stamos. We also would know her
Yep.
from that.
Now married to Jerry O'Connell, interestingly.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so Rebecca Romaine is the star of the show, along with Christian Kane, who you may know. He's Christian Kane is a regular appearer in Dean Devlin's productions. Dean Devlin, I know Dean Devlin first, the creator of this show, from Leverage. Did you ever watch the show Leverage on TNT?
No, I've heard of it, but I never watched it.
Great show. So he created that. Christian Kane was in that, and then it also has Lindy Booth and John Harlan Kim as others. But the other one, again, I don't know how he gets these ridiculously big actors to do these weird TV series and TV-based things, but John Larroquette, of all people, is the main character
I
of
actually don't know who
this.
that is.
John Larroquette is most famous for his role in Night Court as the
That,
uh,
that was a little
prosecuting
before
attorney.
my time, so.
Okay, I mean it's 84 to 92, so
Well, by that I meant I was kind of young when that was going on to be watching a show like that. So
sure. But he also had a sitcom as the John Larroquette Show, and he was also in The Practice and Boston Legal. So
yeah, I never
he
watched any of
is
that. So
okay, but prolific actor, huge name. Everyone knows John Larroquette in terms of like the general populace would know John Larroquette. So he also starred in this show, and this show is really and the movies combined are all this general premise of stopping magic from going too wild and bringing it into the library for safekeeping because magic is dangerous. And then
mm.
the new series is basically the same kind of thing. The general premise of both series is that magic is somehow loose in the world again and everything's going crazy and we need to stop it and bring it back under control by bringing in these artifacts and stopping all the bad stuff from happening. And
no, to be clear, not to interrupt you. This is the show that is currently on TV now.
there is a current one that's on TV now. The next one, the one that just started 6 weeks ago or so, is The Librarians, the next chapter.
Yep, but yeah, that's what I'm thinking of. Okay,
Yep. And so
that's
that's the newest one. So that premiered this year. So the last episode of The Librarians original show was in 2018, and then the last movie was in 2008. So he tends to do like 6 or 7 years between things related to it. Uh, the reason I think that all of this would make a great video game is because you have a huge world of lore, but no maps. It's set in the real world. Like this is not a fantasy universe. This is Earth, and I think it would be a very good action adventure, Uncharted, Indiana Jones style thing where it's really going on escapades and adventures where you're not necessarily fighting a lot because they don't really fight in this universe. Like they deceive and they use tricks and things, but there's really not combat. They're never harming people. They're always using their wits to get out of the way and nobody's ever really dying in them, which is I think it puts an interesting twist on it because a lot of people say, "Oh, there's always so much combat. You're always just killing people in games." And that's it. I was like, "Well, this would just be an adventure. This would be like you are seeking this magical artifact. There's a magic artifact active. It may work as an action adventure because that's very much how the set pieces of the movies are. But if you did the TV series, it may almost work like a Telltale game where you are going after these artifacts and instead of having these combat sequences you're talking your way out of things or you're using your creativity and investigating because a lot of it is figuring out puzzles that they're trying to like they're figuring out puzzles or they are using obscure ancient knowledge about random history or things of that sort. And yeah, I think this would make a very interesting game. And either, depending on which one you want to use as the base, either this action adventure set piece game where there's a lot of running around and escaping from things, or you're doing like a more Telltale figure out the mystery. How do I get this artifact? Because it really is a monster of the week, except it's an artifact of the week where you're like going after one artifact, one thing is happening each week, and they're trying to solve it. So like the most recent episode, there was this crown that made people trust you. You put the crown on, it was a parasite, and you could like mind control people by telling them to trust you, basically.
It really is Assassin's Creed now.
I know. Yeah, and that's what I would think. Do you have any questions about this series? Anything you want to know about it? I don't have too much more to say on the topic for it.
Yeah, not really, but that is an interesting, that's a very cool premise. No doubt about that.
Yeah.
Like I mean, obviously, I've twice now made the joke about it being like Assassin's Creed, but something that you had mentioned about this universe is specifically what was my favorite part of the modern story of the older Assassin's Creed games, which is that, just to get on a slight detour here, that
Fine.
like I liked how in the first like two or three games, right, it would say like this event, which is referenced in Christian Bible. Oh, this was actually an apple of Eden, or whatever it was at the time, right? That
Yeah.
led to this. But then
Yeah.
also in Egypt, this thing happened, and they thought it was the staff of Ra, or or whatever, right?
Yeah.
I always thought
Yeah.
that was really cool. I'm like that. Then unfortunately, they threw that all out the window and decided to
Yeah.
make the weird ass story that they're doing now that I just don't even care about anymore. But that was specifically something I really liked. I liked how it brought a science,
Yeah.
science fiction, but a science fiction aspect to all of the religious events and beliefs and all that other stuff
I
across.
always think
You know?
I always think back to that one. I think it was a Brotherhood mini game where you had to like find the egg in the image or find the artifact in the image, and it was like scanning over, and
I
it was
think that
like
was
where
two. I think that was in two. I know
it,
what you're
it might have
talking
been
about.
two. It was one. It was
Yeah.
in the Ezio trilogy, but I always think back to they have the one image of Washington crossing the Delaware, and he's like
Mm-hmm.
this, and the egg is like in
Mm-hmm.
his hand under his coat, and I'm like, oh, that's
Mm-hmm.
so cool. Love that.
Mm-hmm.
That's so cool.
Yep. No,
Um,
I totally agree. But I mentioned religion, but also I also pretty like how it actually did
yeah,
historical fiction,
yeah.
which to be clear, Shadows does a little bit better than some of the more recent ones. It has a couple historical events that happen, but
Yeah.
it's nowhere near what it was in like the original three
Oh
games,
no.
for example.
No. Yeah, no.
Which I loved. I always, that was one of my favorite parts of it always, is I loved how it brought the sci-fi story into either religious events, which you didn't witness, those were obviously events you read about or whatever, or more specifically, the reason why Delaware was able to, or I mean, Washington was able to cross the Delaware was because he had the Apple of Eden to give him extra power. Something like that. I thought
Yeah.
that was such a cool idea.
It is.
that-
Yeah.
that they then, for some reason, just completely threw out the window.
Yeah. Well, the thing with the librarians and the librarian franchise is that all these artifacts are actually magic, and it is magic, but it's magic that is somehow also science. And like in the latest episode, for example, one of the characters creates like a phone app to like do a magic detection phone app because she like can read the waves of magic or whatever. And there's always that like skeptic who doesn't believe it's really magic, but it is magic in a lot of ways. And there's a lot of moral grayness as to whether it's okay that the librarians use a little bit of magic. Like their whole thing is to not use magic, but they're using a little bit of magic here and there, that sort of a thing. The fun thing with this series is that originally there's only one librarian at any given time, and the librarian regularly dies because his adventures are so dangerous that like librarians lasting for any length of time is like whoa. And so this one librarian that Noah Wiley plays has lived like longer than most librarians have. He's just gotten really lucky and had good teamwork. But the franchise opens up into the librarians, the TV show, where it's basically the library is like, you need help, dude. Like you can't do this by yourself. We're gonna change our and the library is a living entity with a consciousness that never speaks. It doesn't talk. Except in one episode, actually, it does actually manifest itself in a speaking form. But yeah, it's never talking to you. It's doing things like a book will appear when you need it, or it'll have an artifact pop up that like, oh hey, maybe you could use that thing. And the franchise basically was like, okay, we're gonna introduce more people, and we're gonna call them librarians in training, and then they're just gonna like spread the work out.
And that's the current one, right?
That's
the
the
new
one before. That's the
that's
first
the one before.
series.
Oh, okay.
So
Oh,
this
okay.
new one is the librarian in this one is actually a librarian out of time. He got stuck in a time bubble in like the 1800s, and one of the former librarians in training from the first series like yanks him out of the time bubble and brings him into the modern world. The one played by Christian Kane. And so the series is focused on he's like losing his mind first, like what's happening? Where am I? I'm out of time, man out of time kind of story. He's very antiquated. He wears like a cape and everything. And he accidentally unleashes magic. Like I said, they always accidentally unleash magic into the world. So he accidentally unleashes magic by reconnecting his annex, which is like it's not the library, but it's an access gateway to the library. And that's one thing that would work really well in the game is that there are annexes all over the world. So the annex could be like your base of operations as you go to different, like, I'm going to Bulgaria and there's an annex in Bulgaria and I operate out of there and I do admissions. And I'm going to Portland and then there's stuff in Portland, because they're all over in like obscure locations. And so he lets out magic. And so what's happening right now is the owner of the castle in which this annex is, who just inherited it, and this old man, and then this other random guy who just shows up somehow. He ends up there. They're working together along with the Guardian. And the Guardian is like the fighting, physical, military type one who protects the librarian. And for some reason is always a sexy woman. Rebecca Romijn's character was a Guardian. That's who she was in the show.
Oh, I thought you were saying she was the librarian.
No, she's the Guardian. She's the sexy military woman.
Well, they have to be sexy, obviously. There we go. Now it makes sense why it'd be her. But
yeah.
So yeah, I could say I don't know how you could make a game that I personally would like out of this universe.
Yeah.
But I like the setting and the premise that you've explained. That actually sounds very, very cool.
It is really cool. It may be hard to make a game out of it, and maybe, I mean, also they haven't done it because it's not super duper huge or anything, but I do think you could make some sort of action adventure, like I said, Uncharted style, if you just didn't worry about shooting people. If there was like, maybe you could have fisticuffs, like you could have fighting with fists and stuff, because that does happen in the game, but there's no like shooting guns, there's no violence to that degree. It's a lot of cleverness and your brain. So I would say that would be my last pick, is the librarian franchise. And I recommend you the series, Rick. I mean, the movies are pretty easily accessible. You can watch them on like Amazon. I think you can rent them for like $2 or $3 usually. And you could probably pirate them if you really wanted to, I guess. I don't know, but they're easily available, and they're high quality movies. Like, they're clearly TV films. Like, the special effects aren't the greatest thing, and it's 2004 special effects.
Right.
So, you're operating on that budget, but it's fun. It's a fun adventure. It's a romp, I guess, is the best word.
It's definitely a cool idea. No doubt about that. It's a cool idea.
Yeah, and the movies themselves, they're TV movies. They're not long. It's like an hour and a half. It's 90 minutes you're looking at there for literally 90 minutes is how long the movie is on Blu-ray, 106 minutes on DVD for the first one, 95 minutes for the second one, and then 95 minutes for the third one. So yeah, you're not looking at a long commitment if you were interested in checking it out. But yeah, I think that it would be it would be tough. This may be the toughest one to make a game out of the ones that we've talked about so far. But I do think the universe is worth exploring and getting a little bit more into, and really just broadening its base, because it's a really cool place to be, and I've always enjoyed it. So yeah, that's my pick. And I think that brings us to the end, Dirk, unless you have any extras that popped into your head.
I have a sort of honorable mention I want to say, although it is very much cheating, because there have been a lot of games. Some of them have been good. Some of them have definitely not been good.
Go for it.
But I will say we need more quality Jurassic Park stuff. Because, like, specifically, one that comes to mind is on my show a while back, I had asked the audience to pick a game from the past that exists that was maybe bad or mediocre or whatever, something preferably not good, right? But it had a cool idea, and it just didn't work, and you would like to see that revisited and actually made into a good game. And I did it because I specifically had a Jurassic Park game in mind. Are you familiar with the game this is probably from 96 or 97, Jurassic Park Trespasser?
No, I was 3.
Oh, really? Okay.
I was born in 93. So I was 3 or 4.
That's probably about right, because I want to say it came out around the time Lost World came out, which I think that's about when that did.
I've only ever seen Jurassic Park 1. I don't have a huge familiarity.
Well, you've seen the best, but I'm going to make a very contentious point here, which is that even the ones that aren't great are still worth watching.
Okay.
The first Jurassic World is actually very good. But anyway, so Jurassic Park Trespasser was a PC game, and like I said, I think about 97. That actually was a very ambitious game. It didn't work, unfortunately, and it's pretty widely regarded as one of the probably worst games made of that era.
Oh
but it had
boy.
a cool idea. You played as some chick. I think they made it up for the game, um, and it was a physics like sandbox where you were stuck on whichever island. It might have been Isla Sorna. I don't remember which
Hmm.
one it was. Um, and the idea was like you did get guns, but you were pretty limited on your ammo because it was, a pretty much abandoned island. So it was kind of it was a survival game without being what you think of as a survival game. Like I don't think you had to eat or anything like that. Um, but it was about like getting around this dinosaur infested island and, you know, stacking things, or use, setting a trap to follow the dinosaur. It was actually really cool. But again, it was broken, it was bad, it wasn't good, and there was a pretty popular meme of it that went around, which is so I don't remember exactly how this worked because I never actually did play it, but you controlled like each arm individually somehow. I don't
Oh
know how it worked.
wow.
Um, I think it was more for picking things up than anything else, right? But the AI in it was so broken that I specifically remember this constant image that was showed up. You gotta remember this was before YouTube was really popular, so video wasn't really a thing. There was a velociraptor that the AI just broke, and it was just standing there. So whoever was doing it had the character petting the the velociraptor because they had the hand out. This is all in first person, by the way. I don't think I mentioned that. Um,
No.
okay, yeah, it was a first person game. I want to say it used the Source engine, but I could be wrong about that. Yeah, it would have been a very very early Source engine, which was Half Life 2's engine, which was a very early one.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was always a picture of the handout on top of the thing's head. But despite the AI not working, I don't know if it was just the way it was or if its eyes moved because it actually looked like it was looking at the character. So it looked like it was watching her pet him. But anyway, it was a cool idea that just clearly did not come together. And I
Hmm.
would love to see something like that redone because let's be honest with you, if you're going to do a not survival horror per se, but more of a horror game where you have means of defending yourself, but it still doesn't
Yeah.
matter because Jurassic Park is about the
Because you're
perfect
fighting
setting for that.
dinosaurs.
It is the perfect setting for that. Because the reality is, no matter what you do, there's more dinosaurs, right? And the dinosaurs are always going to outmatch you unless they're a compy. So, more Jurassic Park games that are good, please, 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 please,
Okay.
come on. That's all I had to say about that.
All right. Well, like I said, I don't have a ton of familiarity with the Jurassic Park stuff, but yeah, I'm always down for cool games. I'm not really a horror guy, but I know you guys, you and the rest of the
Well,
the
again, when I say
X
horror,
button
I don't really
people.
mean horror in this case. I more mean like just a game where you're trying to survive, but
Yeah,
not a survival game.
not a
To be
survival
clear,
game. Yeah,
you're
I
right, not a
gotcha.
survival game, but
Yeah,
a game where you are outmatched trying to survive and have to use, like again, the idea of trespass. You have to use your wits to get around,
yeah,
but there is constantly something around the corner that wants to eat you. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. No, that'd be definitely something worth looking at if it were ever to happen. Which
It won't. It
unfortunately,
won't. But I would like it if it would.
yeah, unfortunately, most of our hopes and dreams in these universes are not going to come to pass. We got a couple possibilities. I do think someday they'll make a real Avatar game, and obviously the Expanse one is coming. And maybe the light will shine down upon me, and I will get a Dragonlance thing that is
I,
more than
I
just the
don't know if
book
I'd hold your
someday.
breath on that one because, as you mentioned, the Forgotten Realms tends to be where they like to go.
I
So
know. Joe Manganiello is still pretty young. He's in his 40s, I think. He could push for
nah,
another couple
he's
decades.
in his 50s. He's a good bit older than me, but
Oh, okay.
actually,
Well,
actually he might be almost 60 now. He's
let's
just
see.
he's just a very handsome man for his age.
Let's see. Oh, no, he's 48.
Really? I thought he was in his 50s at least. He's not much
Okay.
older than me then. I thought he was a lot older than that.
No, 48, 1976. So, yeah, so he's still alive. He's got a good couple decades that he can push and maybe get something made for us Dragonlance fans, but otherwise, thank you everyone for watching this episode. Let's go through the games really quick. Rick, do you want to read them or you want me to read the games here? I
You can go
gotta
ahead. I actually totally forgot to even bring up the document. So
That's okay. I think that happened last time too. We did this one. All right. Well, these are the releases for games coming from July 6th through July 12th, 2025. Starting up here, we have Missile Command Delta coming to PS5, Switch, and PC on July 8th. We have EA Sports College Football 26 coming to PS5, Xbox Series X and S on July 10th. We have Everdeep Aurora coming to Switch and PC on July 10th. Islanders New Shores coming to PS5, Xbox Series X and S, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC on July 10th. Mycopunk Early Access is on PC on July 10th. System Shock 2 25th Anniversary Remaster comes to PS5, Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Switch on July 10th. Bendy and the Dark Revival comes to PS5, Xbox Series X and S, Switch on July 11th. Farm Together 2 is coming to PS5 and Switch on July 11th. Patapon 1+2 Replay comes to PS5, Switch, and PC on July 11th. And finally, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3+4. This is the remake of those games. Comes to PS5, Xbox Series X and S, Switch 2, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC on July 11th. Rick, I saw you give a thumbs up there for the System Shock 2. I think Digital Foundry did their video review of that already and said it's a great remaster from Night Dive.
Yeah, so. I'm sure it's dated. It is an old game, but that is all I can say is this. When you look at things, PC has by far the longest and most, largest library because it's unending, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know if PC Gamer and all them do it anymore, but back when I would read the magazines, almost every year they would have a top 50, top 100 PC games of all time. If they still do them today, I challenge you to find a list that doesn't have it on it. And I guarantee you, it'll be in the top 20 of every single list you ever see. Because it is one of the very best games ever made. It's dated. That is its problem, is it is dated. And I do truly hope that, and they said they haven't ruled it out, but I do hope they do a proper remake of it because that game really well does deserve it.
I'm glad that it exists for those who are interested in it. You're right; it is too dated for me to really show an interest. It is the kind of game that I would like. Like I enjoy the Bioshocks and whatnot.
Actually, now again, it is dated. I'm not saying it's not. The area where I think you would actually even like it more than Bioshock is it's an actual RPG. Bioshock is not an RPG. Bioshock's a first-person shooter with some very minor RPG elements. That is an RPG. You actually pick a class and everything like that, and you can't just learn the different class.
Mm-hmm.
I will say something I noticed. You did not mention Everwild or Perfect Dark are releasing in that list. That's an interesting thing. That's all I have to say about that one, folks.
And with that, thank you everybody for listening to the X Button Podcast half episode. Again, to emphasize it, Rick, where can the lovely people find you on the internet?
Butch4969 on all the socials, and most Fridays at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at youtube.com/spreadingthenerd. I will be there tomorrow with my buddy Silkenit. Regular co-host Clint is on vacation this week, so he and I will be holding it down and probably saying a lot of very not good things about a certain platform holder as of this week.
Honestly, Rick, anyone could guess which one you might be talking about, but it really could be any of them knowing you. You could have horrible things to say about any platform holder at any time.
You're not wrong about that. You're not wrong about that. There is one in particular who is going to be catching a whole lot of strays. But not strays, I'm sorry. A whole lot of attacks soon.
Yeah, not strays, direct bullets.
Yeah. Strays was wrong. Strays would mean I wasn't attacking them.
Oh, goodness. Well, thank you, Rick, for joining me. I really appreciate you jumping in to host this half episode with me and doing this topic. This was fun. I enjoyed this topic. I think that this worked out. I did not expect us to go for an hour and a half.
I was going to say a half episode, and it's almost as long as the regular episodes.
Yeah, but we had a lot to say. It's a good topic. Yeah. I would love to do this again with Alex and Paul to get their thoughts, or have them do it without us, because I already did it. Right. It'd be cool to get their thoughts on it.
I keep thinking I need to find a way to, I don't know how it would work, but I need to find a way to do an episode of something with Paul, just because he and I don't cross paths all that often.
Yeah.
It'd probably be on a weekend. I don't know how else we'd ever make it work, but I need to find a way to make something happen with him. So
yeah. Well, thank you again, everyone, for listening. You can find me on Twitter at Joseph_Law_Rusa. You can find my writing at Season Gaming as Don Lionheart. You can check my Mind's Eye review from a couple weeks ago now. I have the Mafia Old Country review on deck as soon as we either get a code for that, or if we don't get one and it comes out, I'll just buy the game and write the review for that. I'm excited to review that one, and I will start writing that Mafia article that I've talked about for like 6 months at some point soon, because we are getting to the hype cycle release window of the new game. So that's it for me. Once again, thank you all for tuning in to this very special half episode of the X Button Podcast. Rick, thank you again for your time here. I really appreciate you. And everybody, remember to press X
to play.
Take care, all.